And sadly, in news that won't go away, there are people who either on behalf of victims, which makes those victims look bad by proxy. And I don't like that because I don't like victims that, unless it's the victims themselves that are calling for such things as what I will talk about in this edition. That's one thing. If it's the victims themselves using their victimhood to lash out at what they think is the problem, and if it's not the problem, and if they are creating problems through their lashing out, then I have a problem with that. Because, no, I'm sorry. Being a victim of any kind of crime does not entitle you to overgeneralize, oversimplify, and try to push for legislation or other things to try to soothe your pain because suddenly your pain becomes the most important thing in the world. And any time that you see the same perceived harm or danger, you feel that you have every right to step in and speak of your pain and turn your pain into a weapon to try to hurt everybody because somebody has to pay, somebody has to be to blame. And this is what drives me crazy because in a lot of social situations, the muddy waters have already been made further muddy by professional victims, as well as by victims who use their victimhood as an excuse. Instead of getting better, instead of working on themselves, they externalize their pain and they start going after everyone they see that they feel, whether they actually have grounds or not, are breaking whatever rules that they've set up for life because of their pain. Now, luckily, in most of these cases, even the Connecticut one, apparently these aren't actual victims' families who are calling for this lunacy. Some of them actually understand that this isn't so black and white of an issue, and that things like in the case of the Sandy Hook shooting, that video games had anything to do with it. That by burning these video games, I don't really honestly understand where these people are coming from. I don't honestly understand where these people think they get off in this idea that if we burn these games, it's like some magical spell is going to be broken, that the incantations coded into these games will magically just evaporate, and we will suddenly become a better people and a better society through forced morality. That's a lot of why I'm angry about the Sandy Hook thing. It's not so much that I'm trying to defend this media, although there is some defending that needs to be done, because if you're going to say that this somehow is corrupting our youth, and yet, as my last video showed, you, the parent, the adult, had to be present to buy them that game, and you're willing to take and shoulder none of the blame for the situation that, if this were true, you would be a cog in the causation of how this all came to be. But no, we can't look at personal responsibility when we're supposed to, such as when parenting has failed miserably and created somebody who has done harm to others or created situations that's allowed people to be harmed. No, no, we've got to blame external forces and not solve the real problem. That's part of why I'm mad. This progresses nothing. But neither too does this thing. Colorado theater shooting lawsuit gets May 2014 trial date. Now, for those of you who may have forgot, although I'm not sure how you could, we're talking about the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting. There's a suit being brought about that alleges that Cinemark Theaters failed to protect these people's loved ones and is therefore negligible, because we could see this coming a mile away, right? I was just thinking the other day, wow, I feel so unsafe in this theater. I'm sure someday a clad from head to toe gunman is just going to come in with gas canisters and just start shooting up the place with a whole load of explosives that he never uses in the back of his car. Yeah, that thought has always occurred to me. I've always been so paranoid in theaters because of this foreseeable danger. Now, you could say, for the sake of argument, that in the case of the Sandy Hook lawsuit that's going on, that the school failed to stop a foreseeable harm, but only to some degree. How many, honestly, how many school shootings were happening around Sandy Hook or the Sandy Hook incident? How many? So I'm sorry. If something is happening on every other year and not on a specific day, a specific month, a specific anything, to call that a foreseeable harm that that school, in the case of Sandy Hook, was negligently ignored, just angers me, because it's using the law as a to some degree as a form of revenge. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I don't care who else I have to hurt in order to satisfy my selfish pain. Now, I'm not trying to say that this person who lost friends to this shooting is entirely in the wrong, but I think calling it that the school was negligible in the case of Sandy Hook for not preventing a foreseeable danger is weak at best. But where it's non-existent is here, the Colorado shooting. What do they expect out of this? Oh, because it happened to happen on Cinemark's property, they're automatically culpable for something that almost nobody could have seen coming. Oh, what? They wanted armed guards. They want to make me actually nervous around people who could become unhinged themselves at some point, because sometimes, unfortunately, bad people do pass psychological exams and things of this nature. I mean, this is what bothers me. The answer now is, oh, we need to have armed guards everywhere. This seems like we're trying to push for an industry of increased armed guards everywhere, because as we've seen in hiring practices both in the military and in the police, which tends to have well, as long as you pass the test and you have a pulse, we'll take you. Never mind if our background check brings up that you have attempted or actually did complete a rape in your lifetime and are likely to do so again, because now we're going to give you a gun, we're going to give you a badge, we're going to give you authority, and we're going to call that a solution. This isn't going to solve this problem. This isn't going to make it go away. And just because they have the uniform, this isn't going to help the muddied situations post-Columbine with police tactics of sweep the area and neutralize almost anybody who has a gun unless you can clearly identify them. But even then, that person could be wearing a fake uniform. You don't know who is an enemy combatant in those kind of situations. This is why we changed our tactics during Columbine, amongst other reasoning for doing so. But again, you can kind of make the case, a weak one, that Sandy Hook could have been prevented by the school. I don't entirely buy it. No, I'm sorry, I don't entirely buy it. But where I extremely don't buy it is this lawsuit. And I agree with TJ on his The Amazing Atheist on his channel, TJ Does Life, when he says that this makes the victims' families look bad by proxy. Because this is like them saying, oh, well, we're going to get into this lawsuit, or we're having people on our behalf who are acting as our guardian angels, our white knights, charge in to save the day because we're hurting. And because our family members were shot, despite all the family members who've been shot around the world, all the people who are dying in war, starvation, 1,000 other kinds of deaths out there, some of which are more horrible than being shot, by the way, but I digress. You're trying to say to the world, my pain matters most. Everybody else can just screw off because it's me, me, me. I was afflicted by something and somebody has to pay for my pain. I was bullied to the point to where I almost either killed myself or was going to probably be a Columbine before there was a Columbine, and I'm not joking here. I have spent many, many of my years rebuilding myself. My father, a Vietnam vet who was lost to the system, that wasn't even willing to acknowledge that he had PTSD or that PTSD even existed, who died on a bullet from his service revolver in an alleyway, which is such a fitting ending for such an honorable person as my father. My brother, he died because a deer hopped an adequate wildlife fence in Colorado and their car slammed into the deer, did several pirouettes in the air, and he died when they had struck the deer and he was thrown from the car. I know pain. I know loss. I know loss where, who can I blame? Can I blame the driver of the car that my brother was in? Can I blame the deer? Can I blame the state who considers these knee-high fences adequate wildlife fences while ignoring all the times that deer accidents have actually happened? Do I have a right to make you guys pay for my pain and suffering that I don't have a brother who I was extremely close to and loved very dearly? One who helped me with a lot of my grief, which was taken away from me once he was taken out and people targeted me. Do I have a right to sue the state of Colorado for not keeping me from being bullied by a gang of bullies, not just one bully? No! These were horrible situations. I've suffered a lot. I have lost a lot of people, but you know what? I deal with it. I don't make you guys deal with it. I don't make you guys pay for my pain. I don't make you guys culpable for my pain. That's an insult to each and every one of the people who have lost people tragically or otherwise. And that's an even bigger insult to everybody who dies every day, whether it's to a tragedy or not. This sickens me, and it sets a kind of precedent that says, oh, you lost somebody to something that nobody could have foreseen and had any control over. You're entitled to money for your pain and suffering because, well, because. This sickens me. And it should sicken any of you out there who've lost somebody dearly, whether to a gun tragedy or otherwise, that these are the things that are considered legal proceedings, that these need to happen, that these are going through.